after a while, being in the gay community, it's affirming at first, being around a lot of people that know your similarities, but it got to a point where it did start to get alone. You start to feel alone. You couldn't just hang out with people. You had to have something to give, in some sense, in your relationship with them, to the point where I didn't have nothing more to give. I remember when I was reaching out, when I was in pain, I was kind of pushed away and ignored after a while. And I slowly fell down internally, to a point where I started to believe, God, you must really hate me. And then I was looking forward to, God, just destroy me. Just destroy me. Get rid of me. I was in a relationship with a friend, with a guy, and he kicked me to the curb, and that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I went out and got me a rope and did a true version of hangman's noose, and actually attempted to hang myself, and almost was successful. As I was hanging on a branch, it was getting tight, and what happened was the branch broke. And as soon as I hit the ground, I got up, and I looked up to God, the sky. I said, God, my dad was right. I can't do nothing right. And I remember that night, because once I got the rope off and went back to my car, I was standing outside looking up, and I just had a sense that God was just grieving. And at first I didn't know. I was wondering, who's grieving? And I realized it was God. God was grieving over the whole situation. And that was a turning point in my life when I said, okay, God, if you care, just show me. Just put people in my life now. And that's where my turning point came in my life.
Nancy's 400 miles away, determined. God had told her, leave him alone. And so she was leaving me alone. So if I wanted to communicate to her, I had to be the aggressor. I had to call, I had to write. She talked to me if I called, she'd write me a letter back if I wrote, but she never instigated anything. And that was cool, because I started missing her. I really did. And the more Brian and I were together, the more I saw while this might work, it's got to be second best. There's got to be more to life than the future that we could see, either one of us. And so it was in, I guess around October. No, it was in September of that year. It was the weirdest thing. The letter Y started jumping out at me everywhere I went, everywhere I saw print. It could be a road sign, it could be a license plate, it could be anything. And these Y's kept jumping at me, and it was really frustrating me. And suddenly I just knew. I knew why I was seeing the Y's. It was God telling me, you're at a junction. You've got to go one way or the other. And I knew perfectly clear exactly what it was. I mean, even to the point that I knew to go right, to the right was my way. And I could see that way, as I could shut my eyes and see it plain as day. I still can. It was dark that direction. There was no fear there. I knew the Lord. I wasn't afraid. It wasn't like I was stepping off into the hell or something. It was just that it was dark. And when I would look to the left, it was bright, that direction, and more inviting, and also came thoughts of Nancy. And I kept saying, but I can't do that. You have to understand, some guys, I could appreciate a beautiful woman. I could. But the idea, I might as well be trying to have sex with my mother. That's how I saw women. I got sick at my stomach to even think about it. And so it wouldn't have mattered whether Nancy was fat or skinny, ugly or beautiful. She could have been Marilyn Monroe, and I would have had the same feelings towards her, physically. So it was like, no, I can't go that way. And but eventually, I got more and more desperate somehow. Part of it was, yes, to please people around me, my parents. When do you get married? You're getting close to 30, and they weren't stupid. I had this guy living with me. So one day, out of the blue, I told Brian, I said, we're going to Pecos, and I'm going to ask Nancy to marry me. Now, this is a case of, I like her, she's a great friend. I don't want to have sex with her, and I don't love her like that. Because I'd always associated love with sex and a gratification and, all of passion and all of that stuff, which I couldn't have with her. But I knew she'd say yes, because I knew she loved me. And I knew she thought that we could make everything work. And we actually did that. Brian and I went out to West Texas, 400 miles away. Just before we were leaving, somebody said they needed a newspaper from the convenience store, and I said, I'll go get it. Nancy, come with me. And I had taken Brian with me so that I would have to do what I said. I had to have some, if nobody had gone with me, I just would have skipped the whole thing. But because I had told him, I'm going to do this, I did it on the parking lot of that little store. We were pulling away. I was just about to burst, and I just didn't know what to do, and I stopped the car, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I'm trying to ask you to marry me. I don't know how. And it's going to make me cry here. But anyway, that was the beginning. And again, it was God working in my life against my own will, in a sense. But I wanted to go that direction. I wanted to deny myself, take up my cross, and follow Him every day. I wanted to do that. But how? How am I going to do that?
I mean, I don't know, just in life, you just go through so many, well, what do you call it, mountains and valleys, and there's times where your faith is strong, and you definitely have to have a vision, and I would, just pray for God to tell me, is this what you want me to be doing? Do you want me to stick this out and to persevere? And I always felt that in my heart, that if you'll trust me, that's what I kept hearing, if you'll trust me, I'll lead you through this, I'll show you, and just know that I've got good things ahead. And, He'd give me dreams of us together, running together, and I'm sorry, holding hands and jumping off the cliff. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but I think that really was jumping in, because you don't know where you're going to land, but you trust that God He's got the whole thing orchestrated and planned out. And so, but I know one thing, that you go through periods where you have that strong faith, and there's good times because you love that person, but the times where you feel the betrayal is really a hard thing. That's a thing where seeds of mistrust and different things can get in there, and as much as you try in your own strength to feel like, well, we're going to make it, kind of thing, it does tend to whittle away at your faith. And so I needed the support from my friends and prayer, constant, them calling me up and encouraging me, and or felt like I could call them at any time, and know that they were praying for me, and they would hear the Lord give me words, encouraging words, and then I would see things, I would just pray, and I would just ask God, Lord, as I was driving home and there's issues or something happened, and I would just pray, Lord, I cannot do this myself. There is no way. And so I'm laying it in your hands. I'm gonna let you lead me. And as soon as I would get home, it's kind of like it would be just that quick. I would get it, and there would be something encouraging. Clark would say something out of his, he would just say something that would be encouraging, that would make me know that, God's got His hand in it. He's working on his heart. He's working on our relationship, and it's just like that. It's just like stepping stones, you just go from one thing to the next. But there have been times where you feel like you're not going to make it. There are times where it just feels like it's so dark, like, Lord, you know what? What in the world are you doing? You know, are you making a fool out of me? You know, I'm trying to trust you in this, and things, you know, aren't going like it seems like they should for a time period that we've been in years, and it doesn't seem like it's changing very quickly. But as soon as I would have that heart-to-heart talk with the Lord, He would send something. I mean, it was just like that constantly. So I can't say that there's no way you can do it in your own strength. No way. It is a journey. It's a faith walk, and that's exactly what it is. And I really think that here just recently, and I even shared this to somebody, that I'm grateful. I really am grateful that God gave me this. I guess I don't know what you want to call it, this cross to bear or whatever, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
It's not my cross here to bear. No, I don't mean that. I just mean that.
Challenge.
Yeah, that really it has caused my faith to grow to there is no way that I would be at the place I am right now to where I trust God no matter what. It really, it is that dream He gave me of jumping over the cliff and not being afraid, because I know that He's got exciting things in store if I'm willing to weather the storm. You know, if you're willing to weather the storm, you can get to the place where there's good things, better and better things coming.